DEBx, amplifying voices, accelerating change.
Please help me welcome to the stage
Paiman Owtad. There's a Persian proverb taught to kids in Iran that says, "Don't harm even an ant carrying a seed, for it has a life and its sweet life it cherishes indeed." It's a message about kindness, of course, and to this day I find myself sidestepping ants, except for the fire ants in the backyard. Now, I grew up in a loving family, and for a part of my childhood, my father was a diplomat, so we associated with people of different cultures and races, and to me, then as now, people are just people. I'd also seen people be kind, so I thought that everybody sidestepped ants. Until I was about 10 years old, when I came across images of the Holocaust. I remember this profound sense of sadness, but I couldn't understand what I was actually seeing. I remember the image of this girl holding her hands, and nobody helped her. In this image, I could make out the elements. People standing, someone holding a gun, and someone kneeling. But I just could not understand. Answers from the adults left me with vague notion, but really no understanding. But from that, I had two thoughts. First was a commitment that I would always be kind. And second were questions. What is this image? How does it start? And how do we stop it? Over the years, I've discovered, seeking an answer, that unfortunately human history is just littered with these events, and they're called ethnic cleansing, genocide, but that they all have one thing in common: hate, and that none of them would have started had everyone simply been kind. You see, history teaches us the what and the when, but when it comes to hate, not exactly the why. It also teaches us that once hate begins, it is very hard to stop it, and it does not like to stop until there is great suffering on all sides. So why talk about this? We need to talk about this because hate is on the rise. We need to talk about this because if we don't remember, and if we don't understand these images, regardless of the age of the image, and if we don't viscerally understand it, if we don't put ourselves in the shoes of those victims, it will happen again, as it has. It keeps repeating, and we must stop it. We need to talk about it because, despite last century's lessons, this century has been witness to acts of hate, starting right off around the world, starting right off with 9/11, to the violence, the killing in Charlottesville, massacres in New Zealand, Sri Lanka, and I can go on. We need to talk about it because since 2015, there's been a steady and sharp rise in the number of hate groups in America. In their last report in 2017, the FBI noted a similar rise in hate crimes compared to the year prior. And that included a 37% rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes. And many of these crimes were within the same race: religion bias, a sexual orientation bias, gender bias. So combined with acts of hate around the world, that tells me that hate does not discriminate. So when we know what hate does, and when we know what kindness feels like, why and how does hate start? Well, this question puzzled me until I had a very personal and profound experience with discrimination. Now, what I'm about to tell you happened in the span of 1 minute. A few years ago, while on a trip in a picturesque location, I noticed this car drive up rather fast and stop in the middle of this empty, small parking lot. And of course, it caught my attention. I looked over. There's a couple seeming to have an angry exchange. Shortly, she got out of the car, and I noticed that she had a camera in her hand. At that moment, I noticed her dress. And I noticed that it was from a culture that is not known for women's rights. So combined with their seeming angry exchange, I just decided right then that he had been mean to her, something I couldn't tolerate. So I stared at him, and I stared at him dismissively. At that moment, he turned around and just locked eyes with me. You know how that happens? Well, he went through anger first, then questioning, almost as if he could read my mind, and finally resignation. But that entire time, I kept my gaze just to make a point. At that moment, she got back in the car and they took off just as quickly. At that moment, I realized, what did I just do? That was antithetic to everything I stand for. I realized at that moment that I had made a baseless judgment infected by an old, ugly stereotype sitting dormant, and I had acted on it. I certainly did not hate him, but for the first time I realized that I had betrayed my own commitment to kindness. Have you ever done something like that? Worse yet, when the other person noticed and you didn't or couldn't do something about it. Well, I can recall 3 or 4 cases of discrimination against me, and perhaps other ones that I was too trusting to see. But you see, I learned nothing from those experiences, because I also harbored a bias against them because of their behavior. So overall, you see, this experience was like a flash of light for me, because for the first time, I had an answer to my puzzling question, how hate starts. I understood that it doesn't start as hate. It starts by infecting our judgment with small seeds so quietly and so slowly that we don't even know it exists. And it can only do it through one way, and that is our judgment. So is judgment hate? No. In fact, judgment is an instrument of survival, and we need it. Turns out the problem is not judgment itself, but its infection, which leads to ugly stereotyping, discrimination, and sometimes physical violence. Perhaps many times, actually. But what about hate? That's a different story. It's an instrument of evil. It is old and practiced. It knows us better than we do, because it lives continually as we cycle anew. Its primary tool is to separate us by using our differences and our insecurities. And you see, lately it has another powerful tool called social media, which is why we need to be extremely vigilant. So, is there another news? The truth is, there is good news. Now, I know you're wondering if there was ever going to be any good news, but here it is. Hate is not inside us. It's on the outside trying to get in. Now, I know this may sound like a strange concept, and you may choose to think of this as real or as a metaphor, but either way, please consider this, that study after study shows that we're not born with hate. We're born with the ability to distinguish, but not hate. In fact, the proof is, watching children of different races play, and you won't even see a hint of hate. As Nelson Mandela once said, nobody's born to hate another person because of the color of their skin, or their background, or religion. People must learn to hate. Then what about kindness? Well, kindness is an instrument of love. And we have the cathedral of love embedded deep inside each and every one of us in the form of compassion, empathy, and sympathy. All we have to do is look through those stained glass windows of kindness to see each other's beautiful colors. And make no mistake about it, kindness is the force that derails hate's course. So can we stop hate? Yes. We can, and we must, and we have a responsibility to do so, and we need to do it at its inception. That's the best time to do it, and the best tool to do it is kindness, and we can do it. Now, I know that may sound naive, but multiple studies show that kindness is highly contagious. In fact, a recent study of 5,000 people spanning 32 years by Yale University says that how we act and behave is highly contagious and creates ripple effects, which includes kindness. When asked, what is your religion? The Dalai Lama said, my religion is very simple. My religion is kindness. So if you could stop hate, would you? And if you could stop hate by being even kinder, would you? Well, good. Because right here, right now, we together, we can decide to create a contagious ripple effect of kindness by just being kinder that I promise you will circle the planet. And all we have to do is make the commitment to be kinder. Now you see, I have renewed my promise to that little 10-year-old boy and his commitment to kindness. Because kindness, it melts anger, dissolves fear, brings us closer, and it will stop hate before it begins. It can even help us sidestep hands. And it will never, ever escape me that love and kindness are the vaccines for hate. Thank you.